We have a description of our test, the 100-point test this Friday. Today's Tuesday. We have this description up on our wall, and it's going to tell us exactly what's on the test. So we're going to go through each question or each part of the test at a time. If you look at the first part, it says questions 1 through 6. It's really only 3 questions, but they're worth 2 points each. And it says that you're going to be from section 5.6, graphing inequalities. So if you need help on that or you want to review that, go back to last week, go back to when we graphed inequalities, watch those videos, check out those worksheets. I'm going to just randomly create one. Here it is. Graph the inequality 3x plus 2y is greater than 4. So this is worth 2 points because you have to first change it to slope-intercept form and then graph it, but before graphing it, decide if it's solid or dotted. And then after that, you need to shade either one side or the other depending on where your answers are at by testing the point 0, 0. Unless it actually lands on the line, then you have to test a different point. Now, if what I just said doesn't make any sense, that means you really need to study, okay? So let's start walking through this. To graph this, I need to get y by itself. I would subtract 3x and subtract 3x. My new equation is negative 2y is greater than negative 3x plus 4. Are you with me? What's my final step here to get into slope-intercept form? Divide by negative 2. Divide by negative 2. Divide by negative 2. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when you have an inequality and you divide by a negative, you change the sign, right? So my final slope-intercept form equation of this inequality is y is less than, we change the sign because you divide by a negative, and 3 over 2, a negative divided by a negative is a positive, x minus 2 at the very end. This is our slope-intercept form equation, y equals mx plus b, but it's an inequality. So that's why this is worth 2 points, because it takes a while to get here, and now from this point, we still need to graph it. So, I'll make this a little smaller. Let me draw a graph. Now, of course, on the test, you're going to have a perfect graph. This is a sketch. This is ugly. But on the test, you're going to have a perfect graph. Now, this inequality, it crosses the y-axis where? Negative 2. So let's put a dot at negative 2. Now, from that dot, from here, what's my slope? Do I go up or do I go down? Up, because up 3 over 2 is our slope. So up 3, 1, 2, 3 over 1, 2. We're going to put a dot right there. And I know this one's, it's ugly, up 3 over 2, because we don't have a perfect graph. It would be nicer if it were a perfect graph. Now, before drawing my line, I need to decide if this is solid or dotted line. Is it solid or is it dotted? It is dotted. If I had a solid line underneath the inequality, then it would be solid. But because I do not have a solid line underneath the inequality, it will be dotted. So go ahead and do the dotted line, going right through those 2 points. Now, on the actual graph, you'll be able to keep going up 3 over 2, up 3 over 2, up 3 over 2, and backwards to make your line as long as you want. But right here on the sketch, I just drew it dotted. Now, I need to shade in either this side of the line or the other side of the line. I need to check a point to see where my solutions are at. So what's the easiest point to check? 0, 0, which is clearly on up here on the upper left side of the line. If it works, I'm going to shade that side in. If it doesn't work, I shade in the other side. So if I test 0, 0, I'm going to plug in a 0 for x and a 0 for y. So I would have to plug in a 0 for x, which would be right here, and a 0 for y, which will be right there. So what will I have left over? I'll have a 0 is less than, I'm going to write it out, 3 halves times 0, it's still going to be 0, and then a minus 2 at the very end. So 0 is less than negative 2. What do you guys say about that? 0 is less than negative 2. That's false. 0 is greater than any negative number. So this is false. So the 0, 0 does not work. It's not an answer. So where are our answers at? On the right. On the other side, the lower right. So you shade in the other side. You get it? There's going to be 3 of these guys on the first part of the test Friday. Are you with me? It's not multiple choice. You're going to have to do all this work. Okay? Way. See, way. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, but yeah, yes way. You're going to have to do it. You have to show all this work. Wait, am I recording? Yeah, I'm recording. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to call you away. Just okay. So there's going to be 3 of them, right? Now, let me give you a heads up, guys. If your line is right on the x-axis, you know how right here it doesn't cross through the origin. It does not cross through the origin. But if your line did cross through the origin, then you can't use 0, 0. You have to use a different point. I would definitely, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go back to the other videos or go back to the other worksheets and find a line that crosses right through the origin so you could see an example of that. Okay, so let's move back over here. So that was questions 1 through 6. It's just 3 of those. That's 6 points out of the 25. That's worth a lot. Now questions 7, 8, and 9, it says write 3 different forms. So the 3 different forms are, so these are the 3 forms that we're talking about, guys. So when I say for number 7, write down your slope-intercept form equation, you're going to say y equals mx plus b. When I say for number 8, write your standard form equation, you're going to say capital AX plus capital BY equals capital C for standard form. When I say write down your point slope form equation, that's going to be this guy down here. You're going to have to actually write this out, guys. Y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. So those are the exact 3 answers for numbers 7, 8, and 9. You have to have these memorized. Please don't not have them memorized. What? Please have them memorized. Number 10 and 11 and 12, you're going to have questions that say write in slope-intercept form. And it's from worksheet 4.2. Okay? So let me just give you an example. So let's say I tell you there's a line. The line, let's say this is the question. I tell you the line has the y-intercept of 1/2 and the slope of 9. And I tell you to write it in slope-intercept form. The answer is y equals 9x plus 1/2. That's slope-intercept form. Remember, your slope isn't always just the fraction. The slope is whatever I tell you the slope is. And the y-intercept, it could be a fraction. It's not like it's standard form. Ladies and gentlemen, this type of question, there is no math. I tell you the slope, I tell you the y-intercept, you need to be able to plug it in, right? That's going to be a question on the test. Now, I did say that there was 3 of these guys that you have to write an equation in slope-intercept form. So another way of asking you a question would be to give you a graph. So like let's say I had this graph right here. Let's say my line crosses the x-axis right there at +2, and it crosses the x-axis right there at -3, and the line goes right through it. And I tell you, what's the slope-intercept form equation of that line? Well, all you have to do is identify the slope. What's the slope? From this point to this point? Up 3 over 2. So that's your slope. And what's your y-intercept? It crosses right here at -3. So your y-intercept value, your b value is -3. So now you could write your slope-intercept form equation. What is it? Y equals 3 over 2x minus 3. You see? It's easy, right? So one easy one is where I give you the slope and I give you the intercept. You write it in slope-intercept form. Another easy one is where I give you the graph and you just look at the slope by counting rise over run and look at the y-intercept and you plug it into y equals mx plus b. Those are both easy. There should be like free points right there, free points. Now, there is a third type of question where I ask you to write it in slope-intercept form. That's a little more challenging, where I give you a point and a slope. So here's another type of question where I tell you a line passes through a certain point. Give me any point. Give me a point. -2 what? -2 comma 3. Okay. And it says, and has the slope. Give me a slope. Let's get different numbers than 2 and 3. You guys want 1/5 or you guys want 5? 5? Okay. So if I tell you that your line passes through negative 2, 3 and has a slope 5, and I'm asking you to write it, if I tell you write, and I will tell you write in slope-intercept form, you're not going to be able to write it in slope-intercept form right off the bat because I don't give you an M and a B, but I do give you the slope and a point. So what's the best form to use? Point slope. So let's write down point slope. Y minus Y1 equals M parenthesis X minus X1. That's your point slope form. And I do give you the slope, and you do have a point, which is a X1, Y1. So I always recommend to use blank spots. And what's my X1 value that's going to go right here? What's my X1 value? Negative 2, perfect. And how about my Y1 value that goes right here? My Y1 value is 3. And how about my slope? 5. So right there, I've written my equation in point slope form, but again, it's supposed to be in slope intercept. So what would you do? Distribute to get rid of the parentheses, and then add 3 to get rid of the 3. So let's take this 5 and go 5 times x, that's 5x. 5 times, this is really a positive 2, by the way. I'm sorry, I should have done that first. A negative negative changes to plus plus. So 5 times 2 is 10. And we still have the equal sign, the y, the minus 3. So I need to get the y by itself, plus 3 there, thank you. Plus 3 over here. So our slope-intercept form equation, y equals 5x plus 13. This one will be on the test as well. Not this exact one. You guys gave me the numbers. We just made it up right now. But that's how you do it, okay? So that was questions 10, 11, and 12, writing equations in slope-intercept form. We just did those. Now look at number 13. It says, given a graph, write an equation in standard form. Okay? So if I did give you a graph, so ladies and gentlemen, here we have a graph. And if I ask you to write the standard form equation, that's what number 13 is, to write the standard form equation. Now we know standard form is capital AX plus capital BY equals capital C, capital AX plus capital BY equals capital C. Now, we cannot write standard form looking at a graph. What we could identify is the slope of this line from left to right, and we could also identify the B value of this line, which would let us write it in slope-intercept form. So if I go from here down to here, how much do I rise? Negative 3, and I run 2. So the slope right here, the slope, I usually write it in blue, the slope is negative 3 over 2. Now, what is the B value? Where does it actually cross the y-axis? 3. Crosses at 3, so the B value is 3. So my slope-intercept form equation is y equals negative 3 halves x plus 3. Now, if I want to write this in standard form, we need to recognize that A, B, and C are capitalized. That means no fractions, no decimals. So if I want to get rid of this fraction, what do? I have to multiply everything by 2. So this times 2, this times 2, this times 2. I will have a new equation that says 2y equals, the 2's cancel, negative 3x plus 6. Thank you for keeping up with me. And then, don't go back to slope-intercept. Remember, we want standard. Add 3x. So we're going to go plus 3x here, plus 3x here, and we really do have 3x plus 2y equals 6. Now, do I have to change all the signs? No, because the A value is already positive. So that's our standard form equation. There's going to be one almost exactly like that on the test. Just different numbers. We made this one up. Or they might tell you on number 14, given a graph, write an equation in point slope form. So let's say this, guys. Let's say this line right here, let's say they told us to write it in point slope form. Now, if you look at this line, we know the slope. We already said the slope was what? Negative 3 halves, the slope. Now, let's say they gave us the point. Let's say they gave us the point negative 2, 6. You guys see how negative 2, 6 is a point on this line? Okay, so let's say they gave us this point and you know the slope And if they ask you to write it in point slope form, that's really easy. It's just going to be y minus y1. What would y1 be? 6 equals m, negative 3 halves, parenthesis x minus x1, negative 2, which changes to plus plus. And ladies and gentlemen, that's your point slope form equation of that line. That will be on the test as well. So again, number 13, I want to give you a graph, and specifically in standard form is the way I want your answer. Number 14, the one we just did, I give you a graph and I want you to write it in point slope form, just the way we did. Now, the other half of this test is on the other video, which is explaining everything that we did today with perpendicular lines and parallel lines, and also that practice problem at the beginning of the video where I give you 2 points and you find the slope, you rewrite it in point slope, rewrite it in standard, rewrite it in slope intercept. And the last part of the test is doing parallel and perpendicular lines. Like, for example, if I did say you have the equation y equals negative 3x plus 2, and I want you to compare it with, let's say, 3y equals x minus 7. Are those two lines parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Now, in order for you to decide whether they're parallel, perpendicular, or neither, you need to know, first of all, parallel means the same slope. This slope's negative 3. This slope over here you cannot see yet because you need to rewrite it in slope-intercept form. You divide by 3, divide by 3, divide by 3. Y equals 1/3 x minus 7/3. And yes, you could see that this slope is negative 3 and this slope is positive 1/3. So if you do change the sign and flip the fraction, you will get positive 1/3. So those guys would be perpendicular, right? So there's going to be 3 questions where you say parallel, perpendicular, or neither. And they're actually going to come from the notes that I gave you today. So here are the notes that I gave you today. Notice this last part is where I tell you, are they parallel, are they perpendicular? I want to pick 3 of these guys to be on the test. So make sure you watch that other video so you can see all the explanation of these guys. Okay, now we still need 2 more questions for 24 and 25 on the quiz. And those are coming from our homework worksheet that we got today. Here's our worksheet that we did today. I'll tell you this, I'm going to pick 2 from the first half, because on the first half they tell you that the equation they give you is parallel to yours, so indirectly they're giving you the slope. And on the second half, they're giving you a perpendicular equation, which means that they are also giving you indirectly your slope. Your slope on this one will be perpendicular to this one, which means it would actually be the slope 3. You change the sign and you flip the fraction. So your slope is actually positive 3/1, which is just 3. Please watch the other video to watch those types of questions. And that explains the whole 100-point test. I hope you guys study. It's a big part of your grade before the final exam.